Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Govardhan Hill in Vrindavan, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host Raghunath and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Govardhan Hill. And all I have to say this morning is thank God for Krishna. It is such a joy because it's festival season here. And it is like a massive party going on. And all we we were sitting in the rickshaw going to lunch, which we had an incredible lunch today. We had jackfruit. We had
that okra
in a mustard sauce.
Yeah, like mustard and
Then we had what else? Spinach sabjis, chapatis, rice, rasgulla. It was unbelievable. Anyway, on the rickshaw back, we were like, well, what are you going to do tonight? We're like, let's go to the temples in Punchari. That's the tail of Govardhan. There's all these cool temples there. And we're like, yeah, we'll just go temple hop. Yeah, and then Cypress Vicky, who's completely lost her material mind, is like, I could go for temple hopping every day of my life. And now I was thinking about that. I was thinking, if you say this to any civilian, meaning non-Bhakta person's like, I want to go to temple after temple after temple. That sounds like the most boring. I want to go and pray here and pray there and pray here. It is the funnest thing you can do. It's like a massive Krishna conscious, joyous celebration, carnival, festival, feast. I don't know how to describe it. We woke up right from the morning. We've been doing this stuff from the minute we woke up. And in the morning, we were just sitting at Radhakund chanting. And I just looked over at Mara and go, I feel a surge of joy in my body right now. I can't describe it. It's like a surge of joy. And you're just it's just like this is happening at 7 a.m., at 6 a.m., just people walking through the streets, banging gongs, singing songs. It's unbelievable.
And it never gets old.
It never gets old. It always continues. People are just hugging each other. And because it's holy now, they're just throwing colors gently in each other's faces. And there's teenagers here, and there's, businessmen here, and there's families here. It's like, what a great family vacation. It's different than going to Busch Gardens or Epcot or Disney, where it's sort of just like you're standing in line, you're paying for some ride. It's like a religious, spiritual experience, and you're enjoying it with your. It's like good, clean, wholesome, grounded fun that a kid will never forget, and an adult will never forget. Mm-hmm. That's how we're feeling today, Kaustubha.
Awesome.
It is. We're feeling awesome. And it's our last day. We're leaving early in the morning tomorrow for Nepal.
Oh, wow.
Which means no show tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
I know, a little sad. No show. Yeah. And and that's the latest.
Okay. We got Q&A today. Well,
we got Q&A. We got questions and answers. We do this every Saturday, everybody. Questions and answers. If you have a question, you want to write it in, you send it to Mara, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. And we try to get to them every Saturday. Otherwise, if you're listening to this on Facebook, welcome. This is a daily study of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the ancient literature of India, which connects the soul to Bhagawan, the source, which is the very definition of yoga. And it's done through loving devotion, through engaging all your senses, all your gifts towards God. That's it. You know what we bought today, Kaustubha?
The Santa Claus bead bag.
Well, yeah, let me just show the Zoomers here. I got a Santa Claus bead bag. I don't know why they're selling a Santa Claus bead bag.
Maybe they
I don't
just
even
think
think they know who.
sadhu. You know,
I don't think they know who Santa Claus is. But this is a Santa Claus bag. I got it at the most sacred of holy places. I got the Santa Claus bead bag at Radhakund, and I had to. I was like, "What am I doing? Not going to buy this?" No, you know what we did? We got tile. Ever go to like? Of course, you have seen how just like in bathroom tile or kitchen tiles, they'll have Krishna tiles and Shiva tiles.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, we need a backsplash for the Yogi House kitchen at Super Soul. Let's get a Krishna tile. So Eva, the Polish princess, bought this big Giried Hare Krishna lifting go over downhill tile that we're going to put in. Isn't that cool? Put in the backsplash.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the latest.
Okay. Why don't we get
You
into
ready
the
for this?
Q&A? Yeah. Or
Who's
are
first?
there any more announcements?
There's Bhakti Recovery Group meeting at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time today. And there's no show tomorrow, but there is the Harmonium meetup group with Seth Lieberman for Patreon members at noon.
Okay. So Raghunath, I got a question for you. You ready?
I'm ready.
This is coming from my old friend Bhaktivatsala Das.
Oh, that Bhakti. So I was
I
wondering who that
reconnected.
was.
He and I are like very close friends, but just we hadn't seen each other for a very long time, like 2 decades, like 20 years or something like that.
You know what? I
And-
think the podcast is doing that. It's reuniting people.
And well, it reunited us, and so we spoke. I think it was last week or the week before. We reconnected after so long, and we just had a great time talking to each other. But he's got a question for you, my friend.
All right, let's see if I can do anything with this.
He writes, this is a question for Raghunath. We acknowledge that the torchlight of knowledge dispels the darkness in our lives, but sometimes that light is so overwhelming that it's like the sun arising, illuminating really quite suddenly, revealing everything and everybody, and we even see aspects of ourselves for the first time. It can be euphoric and life-changing. Our natural tendency is to share this with those that we care about or anyone who will listen to us, right? You know that feeling when hey, you did accept a popsicle. I can't hear you.
I thought I was going to accept disciples,
But you
but
ended
instead
up
of accepting
popsicles.
popsicles.
Okay. I mean, anyway, inside joke, but I'll keep going here. He says our natural tendency is to share this with those that we care about. When you first start finding out about Krishna and finding out about Bhakti, you just think, I'm going to tell everybody and they're going to love it. Doesn't always work that way. So he says, this is his questions about that. He says, should we dump everything on them or just pick them up from their station and drop them along the line at the next station? How do we ascertain the right dose of yoga wisdom to share with others without coming across like a god brother and putting them off?
God bother.
Okay, that's
God botherer.
oh, god botherer, a god botherer. and then he adds, that was the question, okay? And he adds, I must add that Raghunath's ability to communicate philosophical concepts in his lyrics is brilliant.
Oh.
He is, he does like a, I guess it's like an online, or he does like a radio show, like a weekly radio show, I think, where he plays all kinds of music. And I think he plays a lot of Shelter on there. He says, I must add that Raghunath's ability to communicate philosophical concepts in his lyrics is brilliant. He is always banging on about yogic cities. Well, I would say that his ability to unpack these truths in the form of short songs borders on a mystic city. I would even go so far as to say that not only has he acquired this city through his devotion, but that he has built this city on rock and roll.
That was very clever.
City meaning mystic perfection. Yeah.
Okay.
Karuna, you don't even know what that is, do you?
So he says, "Thank you for sharing this light of the Bhagavad Purana." So the question was, how do you share your newfound enthusiasm for Bhakti Yoga with other people? How do you know what dose to give? How do you know how to help them in such a way that it's acceptable rather than turning them off?
Well, I I don't know if it was because I was 22 or if I'm by nature a zealot that I drove everybody I knew crazy
A
when I
manic
first got into bhakti.
street preacher.
I find the best thing to do is, as far as dosage goes and how much to give people, the best way of inspiring other people is just to be happy and grounded. Like I love the culture of bhakti. I love Vrindavan. I love festivals. I love feasts. I love kirtan. And when you start to fall in love with those things, you don't have to preach to anybody. You're just loving your life. And people see that and they want a piece of that as well. And the culture is so wonderful and sweet that you naturally do want to share, and you won't be able to help it. I'm just one of those persons. I share everything and whatever I'm into. If I'm like lately, I've been into skipping rope and jumping ropes. I'm talking about jumping rope, or if you're into boxing or into martial arts or into photography or whatever you're into, you sometimes start telling people about what you're into. Or if you've seen a movie, you want to tell people about a movie if you really liked it. What can we do about bhakti? It fills our heart. You naturally want to share it. But there is a point where you have to pull back, because it gets almost like you could sort of freak out your friends. And so you have to become, and I know, I really think you and I have been like crafting this art, and it is art of how to like deliver it at the right time to the right people, with the right dosage, so to speak. And you got to know when to like back off and when to push.
Know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
Yes. Yes. Don't get me going.
Oh yeah, what am I doing? You keep going.
Yeah, you got to know when to, you got to know when to share it, and you can't hit them over the head with the absolute truth. If I always go back to my Oscar Wilde quote, "Give the people truth, but make them laugh, or they will kill you."
Bhaktivatsala is really good at that. He's like you in that. He's very quick-witted.
Well, we have to be as fun as this whole thing is. It's very sober, We're very sober about life and death. We understand we constantly meditating on our temporality, we're constantly in a mood of prayer, and we're praying for people that are sick or with chronic or in danger. Right. Vicky's parents are alive. We're lucky. She's from the Ukraine, and her town was getting bombed like anything, and now it's got a full takeover. And so, this is not a spiritual path where you stick your head in the sand and forget about reality. And you religionists are so unreal. It's the most real. You know what illusion is? Diving into romance or vacations or shopping and collecting stuff. That's running away from your reality. But meditating on our temporality on the regular, that's what we do. We're always talking about life and death and pain and old age. And that's what we talk about all the time. But that being said, we talk about what the spirit soul is. And the spirit soul is joy, and how to find joy and connection despite the crumbling world around us. Am I squirreling, sir?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm wondering if he's still wondering. Okay, but now my question was,
What's his question?
How do you know how much you can share with a person, and how much is helpful, and is there any tips you have, maybe? I mean, you did share an important thing. You said that it sounded like you said the most important thing is that you just kind of like embody the happiness of bhakti, and people will feel that. So maybe that's the essence of your answer.
Well, I find like that my happiness should be coming from my own joy in bhakti. My happiness shouldn't be coming from, now I convinced her, now I convinced him, now I convinced them. I shouldn't feel like the happiness of, I'm going to try to make everybody think like I think, and then I'll derive happiness. My happiness should be just from the way I'm living. And I feel like that is very contagious.
Right. You know, I'll tell you something. I've shared this before, but you know, I always think of the example of my wife, who was a teacher at a Montessori school.
Yeah.
And you know, she never outwardly promoted bhakti in any way, or you know, but everybody knew that she was a little special. You know, she had her neck beads on, which were a little different, and she was a strict vegetarian, and they knew that she was into something spiritual, but they didn't quite know what. But you know, she didn't. This is the point: is that her character. You know, like she wouldn't. The whole school was just full of like backbiting and gossiping and you know criticizing each other. The teachers criticizing the parents criticizing the teachers, the management criticizing both criticizing the management. You know, it was like this triangle of like, and the teachers criticizing the teachers, and you know, she never participated in any of that, and she just was always bringing forth this kind of positive energy. And so although she was never speaking directly about bhakti to people, they came to her. Eventually, when people would go through something in their life, they would come to her, you know, and say, "I know that you're into something," you know. So it seemed like she was building this faith in people just through her character, and then when the moment came, they were ripe to hear what she had to say. So I think that's something to think about, you know.
I think it's very big. You know, if we're really acting like Vaishnavas, it is so attractive. It is so attractive. You know, there's a joy in service. There's a joy in taking care of people. There's a joy in laughter. There's a joy in being there for a person who's going through something hard. And it's just such a beautiful culture that people see that and they want how can I get in on this?
If you really embody
So,
it,
yeah.
right? If you really embody it. Yeah.
And then, of course, like a physician, you have to become expert on, you know, how much to give, how much of a dose you should give somebody. Here's the deal. I like people, and if a person doesn't want bhakti, don't give it to them. Give them friendship. Give them friendship. And then if they, and you'll inspire them, you know, even
Yes,
how
it's
I
a
got
different quality of friendship, right? Like when it's someone that's deeply spiritual, the quality of their friendship's different. It's like it's not demanding of anything of them. There's a tolerance in it. There's a sweetness in it. Somehow it goes beyond maybe what it feels different, right? When someone's very saintly.
Sure. I mean, my whole relationship with Joe Rogan was we were buddies just from fighting. From, you know, we martial arts together. We're just buddies from fighting. I never tried to preach to Joe Rogan about Krishna. He knew I was a vegetarian. He knew I had some Krishna thing going on. But, you know, to them, it was, you know, to him and Eddie Bravo, it was just like a weird thing. The only way I could relate to him was in fighting. And that's how we related. And we had a friendship bond through fighting. But because of the yoga I did, you know, I was doing yoga every day. I was like doing pranayama every day.
You were into something.
Yeah, he knew I was into something. It seemed a little interesting, and it seemed like it was bettering my life.
Right.
And therefore, from a friendship, he got inquisitive.
Right.
Hey, how is your endurance so good? Why are you so flexible? Well, you know, what do you eat? You know, and from there, I became his yoga teacher. And I was his first yoga teacher at that time. And so from there, once the roles switch from we're buddies, then at a certain point, if they like the way you live, then a person wants to inquire from you.
Mm-hmm.
And once that's the thing. The whole culture is built on inquiry and like what we're doing today, Q&A. But if you just tell somebody something who doesn't want to hear it, it becomes annoying. It's called unsolicited advice. People don't like it generally. You know, that's called nagging someone or preaching to someone. I don't consider myself a preacher. If a person wants to know,
Say, what if you're really clever in how you slip things in there? Can you do that?
Well, you don't have to be clever about it. Let them live by example and let them inquire about it.
Can you be
just
clever?
tell them.
Can you be clever?
What's that?
Can you be clever?
Can you be clever?
Yeah.
Like what? Just come in and, you know, spray everybody down with Ganges water. Hey, everybody.
No, I'm just saying, in other words, like there just may be ways of leading a conversation or something like that. It may seem indirect, but it kind of, you're uplifting the conversation, you're bringing it to higher things, and then in that conversation, right?
I mean, I don't know how you can't, if people can, yeah. I feel like you just got to be natural. If it starts being real
What
with
if you're
some like
naturally
agenda
clever?
and
What if your agenda is to
clever.
help people?
Just the saying the word clever means you have some like type of agenda with. I don't like look at it like that.
What if your agenda is
You
to
know,
help someone? Is that wrong?
If your agenda is to help someone, I guess it's not wrong. But I just feel like it's a little bit too. I don't know. I don't look at it like that. I just let it come very organically.
Okay.
I mean, I do it when I teach yoga, but it's sort of what they sign up. You come to yoga class with me. It's sort of what you signed up for. You signed up for yoga. I'm a yoga teacher. You're going to learn about stuff that has to do with, the goal of yoga. We'll zoom out and show you, okay, you're a spirit soul. We're an illusion. We're trying to get the hell out of here and figure out life and try to feel good in this body as best we can. So yeah, I guess there is an agenda, but like I said, I only do it if people want to know it.
Okay. All right, Raghu, we got a lot of questions. Thank you.
All right, you had enough of that? Sounds like you had enough of that answer.
We've been on it for a while. I think you sound like you could go on it the whole show. I'm sure you could enlighten us.
All right,
anyway.
Mara wants to ask you this one.
Mara.
Yeah, I'll ask this one so Raghu can eat his popsicle.
Yeah. Raghunath's
All right,
popsicle
this
is
one-
melting.
You didn't have to be that obvious.
Sorry. This one's coming from our Zoomer, Lisa Tuttle from Maine.
Oh, okay. She's another.
Yeah.
No, she's a
You guys-
Zoomer. I mean, she's
Yeah,
a
she's
Zoomer.
usually a
She's
Zoomer.
a zother.
A Zother.
I think she's a full-on Zoomer.
Yeah, usually she's on Zoom. Thank you so much for providing a regular Bhakti study community. So grateful for your teachings. I find it enjoyable to learn and hear from so many devotees who are raised in Bhakti or who came to Bhakti as a young adult. It's beautiful to see how being trained and educated in Bhakti early really provides a strong foundation for faith and for meaningful ways of navigating the bewildering material world. I'm happy for the Bhakti that entered my path early, and certainly your paths are reason to rejoice. But my life has been really different, and I'm trying to make sense of how to navigate these teachings much later in life. I'm now 58. I've been in full-on, as you would say, material exhaustion for several years now, as I witness the truth of the teachings of what a dead end is to put any hope on steadiness or lasting happiness here. It seems this is a point where it's particularly challenging to keep faith, having never ever been taught in my life what faith really is or how to practice it, while being half in and half out. How do I make sense of my increasing desire to disentangle from the material world while not yet being established in faith of Krishna's love, or even feeling that I'm making too many mistakes to even be accepted by Krishna, and not yet really seeing clearly enough to feel confident in a new direction forward? I definitely feel benefits from japa and joining the Wisdom of the Sages sessions, but I'm not established in feeling Krishna's love or protection coming back to me yet. I think this is my clouded perception too, and if I can change that, it would be really helpful. But what guidance in the interim? I'm looking for really pragmatic guidance here, really with 1/3 of my life remaining. How, in a responsible way, do I make a transition out of material entanglements to bhakti, when now I can only see a kind of faint light of promise, but can't really yet feel yet that path making sense in terms of direction? I'm also increasingly isolated as this tension of material exhaustion increases. It's winnowed the type of activity I want to engage in. I'm reorganizing my life now so I can travel and go on pilgrimage, and I really hope I can come to study with you locally, but otherwise, it's kind of a wasteland right now, especially during COVID. I can't find any kirtan around here, for example. I'm even willing to drive a couple hours, but I keep looking because I'm thinking that the ecstatic practices like kirtan and companionship are missing for me now, and it seems like I need to be in that physiological space in order to keep transforming. Anyhow, my apologies for going on so long. I'm finding it challenging to find even the right words to talk about this. Are there devotees who came late in life who could speak to this a little? I certainly wish I'd come to Bhakti earlier, but the past is as it is. Thank you so much appreciation for your teachings.
Okay. What a good
What a
question.
beautiful letter.
Yeah. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna focus in on one. I kind of have to. If we were together and talking back and forth, we could narrow down the focus of this question. But I'm going to try to intuit what I feel is like the essence of it. But before I do that, I just want to say, I'll start with this. Essentially what Lisa's asking is, I came to this a little late in life, I see there's people that are born into it and it's so natural for them and their faith is strong and it seems like, oh, that must be wonderful. But, I came in at a much later point in my life. It's all new to me. I don't have a lot of people around me that practice it. So I kind of feel like I'm out here all alone. And, although this is the impression that I get, there's something real going on here, right? Like there's something in her heart that's stirring. There's something in her intelligence that's being satisfied and inspired by these teachings and by these practices and by this culture. And that's strong, that's why she's tuning in every day and practicing in different ways. But at the same time, this world is tough and it's dragging us in different directions and it's making us question everything. It's making us, the faith, it's hard to keep that strong. Now, so I'm going to get to that in a moment. But like the first thing that I want to mention is, what point you came in. There's two ways you can look at it. One point is like, I came to this late in life. I only have so many years before I die, and then in one sense that's a testing point. What's the next body I'll take, and where do I go? So it's a disadvantageous to come into it late. Or in this lifetime, you kind of come into life. It's not that you come into life like born as a clean slate. You do come with previous programming from the previous life, right? With impressions stored in the mind. But in one sense, it's kind of like a clean slate. Like you are coming in a lot fresher, and the impressions that you get early on help to shape your attitudes and your habits and your determination and your faith and so on. So in that sense, it's advantageous to come in early, right? But another way to look at it is like, it may be even a more realistic way to look at it, is that at any point that I got involved in this, it could have been, it's just a point. It's a point in time. It's like all these lifetimes that I'm living are just like one long stretch of time, whether I'm in this body or another body. The fact that whether I found it like, 10 minutes before I died, I found it, right? I found it. And that is such a blessing, and that is such a wonderful thing. And there's no reason to lament. There's no reason for depression or despondency. There's only reason for gratitude and optimism and positivity. And I found it, right? So I think you have to embrace that side. If in a healthy way you can say, oh, I missed out on something. I got to make up for it. If it's driving you on in a positive way, that's fine. But if it's creating a sense of hopelessness, then let that go and focus on the idea that I found it. And whether I found it, like we were, I think, was it last week or the week before, we were talking about how they say that, like, finding this truth is almost, because if you count all the living beings on Earth, how many are not even just humans, but so, and then all the living beings in the universe, to find this, it's kind of like if a turtle were in the ocean, and if anywhere in the entire ocean it popped its head up in the water, and there was this piece of driftwood floating with a hole in it, and the turtle just by chance popped its head right through the hole in that piece of wood. It's like, our fortune is something like that. So if I found it at the beginning of life or the end of life, I'm a lucky turtle, right?
You're one lucky turtle.
She's a lucky Tuttle, Lisa Tuttle.
She's a lucky turtle.
So that's one thing. But let's go back to that earlier partner question where she says, how do I make sense of my increasing desire to disentangle from the material world while not yet being established in faith of Krishna's love, or even feeling that I'm making too many mistakes to even be accepted by Krishna? And then she goes on to say, I definitely feel benefits from japa, from this type of meditation, and from joining the Wisdom of the Sages sessions, but I'm not established in Krishna's love or protection coming back to me yet. I think this is my clouded perception. She says, I think this is my clouded perception too, and if I can change that, it would be really helpful. So let's focus in on that part of the question. I think that's the essence of her question, is like, this is making sense to me intellectually. It seems to put the pieces of the puzzle together. It makes a whole lot of sense. And I see a beauty in the culture and so on, so I'm attracted to it. But at the same time, I don't feel a lot coming back on a personal level, right? This whole this whole spiritual tradition is speaking about connecting to God in a personal relationship, and quite frankly, I'm not sure if I'm feeling it coming back. And so, although I don't think I'm necessarily worthy of it, but it does make me feel vulnerable and questionable, and brings up doubts in my mind and so on. And so I get that. That makes perfect sense. You know, and then of course the answer to that would be, where do you get that faith? How does your faith get stronger? You know, we're living in a world that's attacking it at every moment. How does it really gets stronger by associating with people that have strong faith? But you're in a place where there's not a lot of people like that. And so that makes it all the more difficult. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna share something that I think may be relevant. I think may be important, and that is that we come to bhakti with a mind full of cynicism and skepticism, and that's okay, right? But what we do is we begin to apply that to everything we read and everything we hear, and particularly into what we read and hear about Krishna himself as a person. Because Lisa's asking about, like, I don't necessarily feel Krishna's love or protection coming back to me. I don't feel like there's a person there stepping forward and say, I got your back. And, you know, when we read, we put everything that we hear from Bhagavatam, say, we put it through, or Mahabharata, wherever we're hearing about Krishna, we put it through our filter that we've developed. That's a filter to protect us from other people in this world, right? To protect us from the horrible boyfriend or the nasty husband or the, you know, the psycho girlfriend or the, you know, the parent that was, unloving or had, you know, some kind of harmful behavior to me, or the teachers that mistreated me, or the boss that I can't stand, or the kids in school that were mean to me. We create these filters to filter out. We don't want that experience anymore. So we put up a certain type of healthy guard, you know, kind of like a firewall, you know, to kind of protect us from being hurt. And that firewall is also informed by or built up of ideas of what behavior is acceptable and what behavior isn't acceptable. And then we hear about Krishna's life, and we look at his behavior, and we start to put it through that filter, and it can create uncomfortable feelings, like he's killing people all the time, you know, like what's with that, you know, or it can be difficult to understand him as a person. As you get deeper into this, you see, there's a lot. What Prabhupada did that's so wonderful is, like, if you read the Krishna book, which is a summary of the 10th canto, it's Prabhupada telling the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, which is all Krishna's life. He's trying to help us understand it at every step. He's trying to help us to say that when Krishna steals, it's on a completely different platform of truth than the truth of this world. That it's in a realm of different rules. Because when people steal in this world, they're doing it with a bad motive that harms people, and it creates a victim. When Krishna steals in the spiritual world, it actually just brings benediction and joy into everyone's life. And so we try to judge his behavior according to, you know, we were speaking just the other day, yesterday and the day before, that there's a name for Lord Vishnu or a name for Lord Krishna, Varadaraj, right? Which, you know, Raja means the king, and Varada means giving benediction. If we're going to understand Krishna's nature, you have to accept this with faith in the beginning, but then you take this faith and then you try to see through this filter. You try to see through the filter that everything that Krishna does, everything is granting a benediction, right? When he's dancing with the gopis, you know, that's the highest benediction, you know. When he's playing with his friends, that's a benediction, you know. But even when he's fighting, that's a benediction. You know, when he kills, that's a benediction. He can somehow move through life where everything he does is benefiting us. He allows us to turn from him. He allows us to say, Krishna, I'm not interested in you. Actually, I want to be like you. I want to be I want to be the center of love and adoration. I I'm confused, and I think that your position should be my position, and we get the freedom to kind of play that out in a world of where there's time and karma and the gunas are in effect, and we can, according to our karma, we can experience to some degree what it feels like to be God in a sense. And then sometimes we're not feeling that, we're feeling pain. And then we look back to his example and we say, look at him, right? It's the same kind of envious attitude that got us in the position in the first place. Look at him, just running around with lots of girls and, just killing people left and right. And this, we have to try to, at least theoretically, try to understand that this is a being of a different nature, working in a realm of a different nature, where the things in this world that are problematic are not problematic in his world. Actually, he's benedicting everyone. Try to open your heart up to Krishna. Try to see him following in the footsteps of how the great saints have seen him. Use their filter. Try to understand their filter. It's not that we have to throw all doubt out the door and all skepticism and questioning. You can bring questions forward, but also try to see it through the eyes of these great bhakti yogis, these great seers, these great teachers. Try to see it through their filter. Open yourself up to that possibility. And then there might be some kind of magic that happens in your mind, and magic that happens in your heart. And he begins to if we're harboring some resentment towards God, it's harder to feel God's protection. It's harder to feel God's love. Just like it would be with anyone, right? If you're harboring resentment to like a parental figure, if you're harboring resentment to, a lot of times someone's trying to help someone and they see they're not opening up their heart to me, and it's almost like we were just talking about with Bhaktivatsala's question. You have to be patient, right? And wait till they open up. And so Krishna's waiting for you to open up, and there's more opening that can be done, right? And when you fully open up, it's not easy, but when you fully open up, you're going to feel a rush. You're going to feel something. You can't demand that. And so therefore, there's a piece of advice that was given by Srila Prabhupada's guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who said, don't try to see Krishna, but act in such a way that Krishna will see you, right? Act in such a way that Krishna will want to see you. So in other words, try to open your heart to Krishna. Don't worry about how late you came in life to this. Just be grateful that you came to it. And then try to open up your heart to Krishna and see Krishna the way that Prabhupada is saying this is how you can see him, how the way the great saints are seeing him. And then live and serve with the idea that I've been in this world for a long time. I've turned my back to God for a long time. I'm just going to dedicate my time today to trying to live and serve in the way that would please him. And then open up your heart and see what happens. That would be my advice.
One day at a time.
One day at a time. Okay.
I like the thing you previously said. You say this a lot. I like it. Is that we joined young, and yeah, we had a lot of our early years.
We had a lot of we had some pretty serious developmental years that were not.
Yeah, we had a lot of chaos going on, but there's something to be said about people getting into it later in life. They've had life lessons. Right. The romance of the material world has been sort of stripped away. They've fallen in love. They've had their heart broken. They've been through a marriage or two or three. They've given birth. They've experienced the joy and the pain of children or of teenagers, or whatever it is. Getting over some addiction, or they've hit a rock bottom. And those life lessons are part of our spiritual path, and they propel us forward, even though we may not be part of institutions. So when you hear the message as a 19-year-old, it might be like, yeah, I don't want to go to college. I'm going to take up this bhakti thing, try this out. This seems sort of cool. But those deep realizations come, I think, when you're 50, when you're north of 50, and and people are telling you like the material world's got some serious shortcomings. You're like, yes, it does. I totally get that. Yeah. And I think the fruit is much more ripe to really imbibe. If a person's got real deep integrity and they really want to be genuine in this world, and they can see through the charade of the material world, when you read something like the Bhagavatam, it really can wow you. So I'm just reiterating what you've said before, that it's not a deficit to be older, getting into bhakti. Sometimes it's a real asset.
Thank you, Raghu. We're
Thank
north
you.
of
Thank
we're,
you.
We're north
said
of
it.
50 from
And we're north
Boca
of
Raton.
50 from Sacramento.
All right. Okay, here's another question for you. It's a short question coming from Roger via Discord. You ready?
Okay. Yeah.
How does one know when they're qualified to identify themselves as a devotee?
Well, my friend, there's two ways to look at this.
Okay.
There's identifying others as a devotee, identifying yourself as a devotee. Don't worry about identifying yourself as a devotee. But one little practice I like to do is I see everybody I meet already as a devotee. Sometimes I even imagine them dressed like devotees. And no matter what they ask me, even if it's for directions on the street, I think that wherever they want to go, whatever question they're asking me, what they really want, their underlying question is, how can I fall in love with God? That's the ultimate question, everybody. That's who they really, when we're going around embracing lovers, embracing our kids, embracing our dog, embracing our car, the things that we fall in love with in this material world, what we really want to embrace is Krishna.
Okay.
And if you can go into a relationship or any conversation knowing that's what they actually want, then you'll treat everybody like a very special soul. And not only that, when you see them like that, it sort of opens doorways for them to become that in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds like a great answer to the previous question. It was very good.
So I think as you start to develop that vision, you see everyone as devotees. Why? Because we're all devotees. Everybody's a devotee. A grasshopper is a devotee. We're all devotees. Some of us we're devotees that just forgot. And the process of yoga is to remember that we forgot and to start developing that. Really, everybody's a devotee. Why? Because we're all spirit souls. We're just not good devotees. And so we become better devotees by remembering our relationship instead of devoting ourselves to dead matter. Devote ourselves to God, and thus we can really devote ourselves to other beings on this world. And I'm not otherwise I see a being for, oh, I want this from him. I want this from her. Oh, I want to get this from him. Then everybody else becomes some type of part of my overall agenda of how can I enjoy the material world. But once I start to see they're part of God, and the highest thing I can offer them is to assist them on their path to God, not to fill some loneliness hole in my heart, but to actually assist them on their pathway towards back home. Then we actually become a good friend, a good partner, a good spouse, a good parent. It perfects all those things.
A good devotee.
Yeah, and that's what devotees do. We're trying to remember we're devotees. We're trying to see everybody else as devotees and trying to help them and thus me remember.
So that was kind of like what I just mentioned about, like, don't try to see God, but try to act in such a way that God will see you. Don't worry about being a devotee, but just try to see everyone else as a devotee.
Now I'm thinking like Kaustubha.
Or like Srila Bhakti Saraswati Thakur. I remember once Prabhupada, someone wrote a poem and they sent it to Prabhupada. And in the poem it said something like, Krishna, I am your devotee. And Prabhupada wrote back to them and said, actually, we never consider ourselves a devotee. But we say, in other words, like, that's a very high, like, measure of devotion, But he said, but we see ourselves as the servant. So we can say, Krishna, I'm your servant. And I think that's like, I think in a sense, it's like, yeah, let's just identify like that. I'm the servant of Krishna.
Or I'm the servant of the servants.
No, okay.
I'm the servants of the devotees. I don't look at myself as a devotee. I look at the servant of the devotees.
Yeah.
Okay. It's otherwise spin on that.
But I think also Roger's probably, if anyone's listening here every day, we could think of them as a devotee too. All right. You got a question for me?
Yes, I do, sir.
All right. Who's it coming from?
It's coming from someone very interesting. We call him Youngblood. Youngblood via the Discord thread. The Discord thread is really happening with questions. If you're a Patreon member and there's a community supported podcast, and want to thank all the Patreon contributors. If you want to become one, patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. Then you have access to our crazy, out of control Discord thread, which is a whole, what is it? It's like a different rooms people can enter into and channels, chat with their buddies,
Threads.
make online pen pals. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. This is from Eben Youngblood. Not exactly a question specifically.
Okay.
And I hope it's not too vague. He's really setting himself up here. But please, may you give some insight into the connections and history between Bhakti Yoga, Hinduism, and the Western Hare Krishna movement. Great question. Okay. I think that is a question.
That's
also,
a question.
Is there anything? That's a question. It's
got a question mark right after it. I see it.
It's got a question mark at the end. That's how you know it's a question.
Okay.
Young blood. Also, is there anything that can be said about the disapproval of the modern Krishna consciousness movement by some Hindu communities? What might be the reason for this? Where does it stem from, and how can we navigate it?
That's a
the
question.
comes out of a. What's that?
Got another question mark right after that. There's another question.
It's another question. That is a question too. This question comes out of a recent conversation with a Hindu friend. So I'm just seeking some insight from those who have experienced firsthand different facets of Indian religious and spiritual cultures. Okay. Thank you in advance for your kindness, Eben Youngblood, via the Discord thread.
Eben Youngblood. So, I suppose there's two ways you can look at it. You can look at it from within the Bhakti tradition or from without the Bhakti tradition. In other words, like how would scholars kind of put those, he's put three things together here: Bhakti Yoga, Hinduism, and the Western Hare Krishna movement. What's the relation between all these? And I think from let's say from an academic point of view, how it would be studied and understood is that Bhakti Yoga is something that has been practiced for thousands and thousands and thousands. From within the tradition, we say Bhakti Yoga is eternal. From an academic point of view, Bhakti Yoga is something that's been going on for many, 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 many centuries in India, right? And it's part of, they would say, it's part of a broader tradition that has become called Hinduism, right? The term Hindu is it's a bit tricky because it's a relatively modern term. I don't know exactly when the
Greeks.
The Greeks?
The Greeks started that one.
How do you know the Greeks started?
Serious. Because I'm a scholar. I'm a scholar of sorts.
Of course.
I'm a philologist and a scholar.
But I'm saying, how old is that? I know the word is in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is 500 years old, but it's not nearly as old as the tradition. That's my point, right? It's not nearly as old as
Hinduism.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's the Greeks were before Lord Chaitanya, so.
Yeah. But you haven't given me any solid evidence that it came from.
You want a Greek name? You want his name? I can dig it up for you.
It's okay.
You keep talking. I'll find the Greek name.
All right. But in any case, my point is the word Hinduism refers to a broad swath. Is that what they say? Just there's a lot of different... Swath. A broad swath. Of different ideas, kind of related to each other, stemming out of the Vedic culture, the Vedic teachings, the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, and all, there's a very broad tradition, and people approach it with all kinds of different ideas. Some of them are monotheistic, some of them are pantheistic, some of them are practically atheistic. They involve all different kind of practices. Some practices are involve extreme renunciation, and some have more to do with ritual, and some have more to do with austerity, and some have more to do with meditation. This just wide swath of ideas and beliefs connected to each other that you could call Hinduism. A lot of different faiths. Some Hindus believe that there's many gods. Some Hindus believe that there's only one God. It's a huge wide thing, and within that there's a tradition called Bhakti Yoga. There are important teachers and, important philosophers that have established, the ideas that they believe in. And there's been important teachers that have established the different practices that are practiced within the realm of Bhakti Yoga. So from an academic point of view, people would say that Bhakti Yoga is one trend, you could say, one movement within the broader Hindu tradition. Okay, and so then what is the Hare Krishna movement? The Hare Krishna movement is it's within Hinduism. There's Bhakti, and within Bhakti there are many different lineages that come down, and one of them is called Gaudiya Vaishnavism. It means the followers of a particular avatar, you could say, for lack of a better word, of Krishna named Chaitanya. And so the Hare Krishna movement is following one of these lineages of Bhakti, which you could say is part of a broader Hindu tradition, again, from an academic point of view. But it was, the Hare Krishna movement was started and brought by Srila Prabhupada to the Western world. He actually established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in 1966 in New York. And he was presenting an authentic path of Bhakti Yoga. And he traveled around the world, and within the last 12 years of his life, he basically spread it around the entire world. And that tradition, that particular branch of this lineage grows and continues to grow and grow and grow since his passing away in 1977. So that gives you an idea of, like, I hope that kind of gives you an idea of the, you know, again, a secular way of looking at it. Now his question. Is there anything that can be said about the disapproval of the modern Krishna consciousness movement by some Hindu communities? What might be the reason for this, and where does it stem from, and how can we navigate it? I'll give you two reasons why that might be, and of course let me preface it by saying I know a lot of people. I mean, in my 30-something years of experience as a participating in the Western Hare Krishna movement, I found generally that Hindus really appreciate what we're doing. You know, they think, my goodness,
Yeah.
what they're authentically practicing this. I know, like, for instance, well, let me put it this way: what Srila Prabhupada did was really powerful, because if say you're born in a Hindu family in the United States, you're kind of you may be somewhat out of touch with the tradition itself, and you see your parents and they're not totally into it. That's why they moved to America in the first place, is because maybe they're more concerned with making money than they were with preserving the tradition. Maybe I don't want to generalize too much. And you see your grandparents and they're doing some puja, and you can't relate to it all. But when you walk into into the world of the Krishna consciousness movement, you're seeing, well, these are Western people that are into this. And they're not only it's not just a sentimental thing. They got all kind of philosophical answers. They're applying it in life. They're dynamic and they're fun, and it comes alive for them. And so a lot of, let's say, Hindu parents in America, they really appreciate, like, oh, I can bring my kids here, and they have a better ability to get my kids into this tradition than I do. So on so many levels, I've seen huge appreciation for what the Krishna consciousness movement does from the broader Hindu community. But the reason why I think there's sometimes friction, I'd say there's two reasons. One is this, is that I would say in the modern history of Hinduism, like, say, going back, like, say 150 years or so, a lot of different teachers kind of came out, a lot of different figures, popular figures of Hinduism arose. And what they did was they kind of blended two different ideas. Like, if you go back further in the tradition, it was kind of the demarcations were kind of clear. Some people within the Hindu, quote unquote, Hindu tradition, believe that they were monists. They believe that ultimately we're all God, and the ultimate salvation or liberation is that you realize that I am God, and everyone merges into the one divine energy. There's no longer me and you. There just is. There's just like being, Whereas another tradition within that, there are two different interpretations of the tradition. Another tradition within that said, no, we always are individual. I'm always me. You are always you. God is always God. And in the perfection of our enlightenment or our liberation, we realize that, and we exchange in loving pastimes with God, and that's like the ultimate goal. So again, in the past, you go back, and these two lines are very well demarcated. But teachers, that they call them Neo-Vedantins, right? Like, not exactly. That's called Vedanta. Those two different ideas, and they would go back and forth between which one is right. But the Neo-Vedantins kind of blended the whole thing together, and that became known as like Hinduism, right? Where like everything is acceptable, and everyone's idea is right. It's not really the actual tradition. And so when the Krishna consciousness movement is authentic in the sense that it says, look, we believe that God is a person. You believe that we're all God and we merge into one divine energy. Okay, let's disagree with that. That's not a problem to disagree with that. We don't have to pretend that we disagree, that we don't disagree. We have different ideas. Let's recognize that and let's talk about it. Now, granted, there's been a lot of immaturity on both sides of that, where you argue about it and it gets silly. They think, the higher thing is just that everything is right. That's just not real. One of the two has to be right. It doesn't mean that we can't respect each other. It doesn't mean that both aren't moving in the right direction. But let's understand that we disagree on this point. And so I think that becomes an issue where some Hindus say, they're not presenting it the way that I know this teacher presented it or that teacher presented it, where it's like everything is right, So I think that's part of it. And then another problem is that sometimes there's a type of, I would say, bigotry within the Hindu tradition, a bigotry that's like based on, where the idea is that based on our birth, we're qualified to practice Hinduism and others aren't. And they say what the Krishna consciousness movement did is they went around and they spread it to everyone, and that's a problem. Where if you look deep into the tradition, you'll see that it's not a problem. Right? The actual tradition says that we're all spiritual beings and we all have the qualification to practice this. But sometimes people want to preserve their positions based on birth, and so they rebel against it. They fight back against it. So those might be some reasons why there might be some friction. Was that too splayed out, Raghu? I can't hear you.
There we go. I think that I'm here at a holy place during a festival, and when we drive by dressed in traditional dress of dhotis and kurtas and saris, the people lose their mind. They love to see Westerners. I mean, for the most part, I'm sure there's people who are like, who are these fakers? But I don't think of it like that. I find it very inclusive and welcoming, personally.
The Bhakti culture in particular, right?
Oh, Bhakti culture, of course. Yeah. We're not a body. We're not a Hindu. Hindu is just a name given by either the Persians, the Mughals, or Alexander the Great. That's what my research and the message board says. But it basically,
I'm sorry, say that again. Who?
Giving names.
Were the Greeks? You said the Greeks?
I said the Greeks. So
it wasn't the Greeks.
Alexander. Alexander was a Greek, right? I don't call him Alexander the Great. That's what his people called him. I called him Alexander the
Raghunath,
Invader.
he's great too. We're all great. You just try to see everyone. Try to see Alexander as great, as a great devotee.
Alexander the Great devotee, but these guys are horrible, killers of innocent people.
You were just telling us how you see everyone as a devotee.
Yes, you do.
Don't
see him as a
limit
devotee,
that.
but
Allow him in.
But they forgot.
But don't you forget.
I didn't forget. That's why I call him Alexander the Great devotee.
Okay.
Not the great.
Okay. Just check.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's time, my friend. It's time.
That's it.
And we are going to the tip of Govardhan Hill right now.
Say a prayer to Lota Baba for me.
We will. Lota Baba, he's waiting there for you. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We got some prayers going out. Got some good people. Gopal Chandra has a question. I'm looking for a meme drawing gif of Krishna dragging back a fallen devotee who surrendered to him. Okay. All right. Parmananda prayed for you. Gopal prayed for you. You guys are all my prayers. Wisdom of the Sages, Italy. Go to WTSItaly@gmail.com if you want to join our Italy retreat.
WOTS.
WOTS. And if you want, Facebook people, if you want to join us here on Zoom, go to wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com and join us. Mara will send you out the secret codes. You can join us live here every day and look at all these other people. We have such a nice community here. It's amazing the feedback we're getting from people. I'm just so inspired. What was that message you wrote today? Just like one person after another, just sharing their heart with us. And the Bhagavatam is there for us to hold on to when times get tough. It's the biggest gift we can give to the world. So yeah, our job is to really experience that joy of bhakti so we can hand it out to everybody we meet. And now more than ever, people need this message of the Bhagavatam. Come on, people.